Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Memo Creative Festival podcast, where we discuss big ideas around how creativity and culture shapes the way we live, work, and connect. I'm one of your hosts, Taylor Pfeifer, and I'm here with my co-host, Brooke Hoffos. And today we are interviewing Jillian Ross.
Jillian Ross is a collaborative master printer based in Saskatoon, Canada. And from 2003 to 2020, she led the David Kroop workshop in Johannesburg in South Africa, where she collaborated with over 100 local international artists. And during this time, Ross became one of William Kentridge's primary print collaborators, completing more than 200 editions to date.
She also holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of Saskatchewan, and in 2021, she and her partner, Brendan Copestag, founded Jillian Ross Print, or JRP for short, which is a collaborative print studio and publisher. JRP works closely with South African and Canadian artists, studios, institutions, and galleries to produce print editions, exhibitions, artist talks, and workshops. Collaboration is central to their practice and many large-scale projects involving a team of printers and multiple workshop settings. Thank you so much for joining the podcast, Jillian, and welcome.
Thank you both very much for having me.
We're excited to have you here. I'm really curious, just to start it off, what initially sparked your interest in printmaking? And how did that early curiosity lead to this lifelong passion? I know that your artistic journey began in Saskatoon, but you did eventually kind of move to Johannesburg in South Africa. But what initially was in you that you're like, I want to do printmaking?
I would never have thought that I would be in printmaking. I often speak about it being a love-hate relationship, and it's very frustrating. So I did 2 years of printmaking at the U of S, and all I knew at that point was that I was not set out to do lithography. But beyond that, I had no idea that the collaborative print world existed. I did know that I did not want to be an artist. And I know that sounds funny, but I'm graduating with a Bachelor of Fine Arts. My interests were art, science, and math. And I met my husband, Brendan, who is from Johannesburg, and I moved to Joburg with him with the intention of being there for 2 years after we graduated. And I volunteered at the David Kroop workshop. So that's how I stumbled into it. I was an intern to the printmaker at the back of the studio, and I was simply there to help him print editions with the artists that came in to work with him. And what that meant, quite simply, is that you're immersed into a world with artists making art, but you don't have to own it and stand in front of it. You actually just get to contribute to ideas eventually and that kind of thing, and to make things. But I don't believe that everyone has a voice that needs to be heard. But we can all contribute to a bigger picture. So I would never have thought I'd be a printmaker.
Yeah. Is that kind of why you're like, I don't want to be a fine artist or, kind of own my own work? Did you feel like you didn't want to have that voice, or did you want it to be a bit more collaborative like you're speaking to now?
Well, I didn't know collaboration existed at the time. Really. So it was more, I thought an artist had to be making their own work, presenting it, writing artist statements, standing in front of it conceptually, thematically, and then working in your own studio by yourself. And what I realized after a really long time is collaboration is super interesting. You never know where it's going to go. It provides it's more fulfilling. It's problem solving. It feels more like a community space. Yeah. And making prints is something that's very technical. So if you're an artist who doesn't make prints, having somebody to guide you with the technical aspects means you can make something you wouldn't normally make. And it means that the printmaker can guide the technical while the artist can think of the work conceptually. So two people coming together to make something they wouldn't make by themselves. And that's the world that I stumbled into in Johannesburg, unintentionally. And that's why it's never become boring. I've worked with, even when you read my bio, it's 100 different artists. We've had people in for 2 days. I've had people I've worked with now for almost 20 years. I've had artists I've worked with for 10 years. I've had artists I've worked for here in Saskatoon for 2-3 years. So,
Mhm.
and every project's different. And
Mhm.
like I said, I don't do lithography. But otherwise, I've done projects like in silkscreen. I've done projects
Mhm.
in lino cuts and wood cuts, and my specialty is etching. So I make works on
Mm.
copper plate.
That's interesting. I'd
So
love
it's this
like if
juggle.
yeah, no, I love that idea of collaboration because I agree. I think as a fine artist, you find yourself a little bit isolated. And being able to bounce ideas off people in any kind of creative setting is so beneficial. And maybe just to like help people who are listening and are new to the printmaking world. I know in your bio you're described as a master printer. Can you dive into a little bit more of what that means and what kind of skills and sensibilities that role kind of requires on a day-to-day basis?
Master printer is more as just a term that you've been doing this for
Mm.
a long time.
Mm-hmm.
I say that you never quite master anything in printmaking
Mm.
Mm.
because the variables are so big all the time.
Yeah.
The things that I can master is how to reproduce something now. And when I say
Mm.
reproducing, I mean redo it. So I can figure out how to redo something I've done, and I can also fix a mistake. So
Mm-hmm.
those are the kind of the things that you master, but it's more like a sense of where an idea that comes from an artist can come into an actual physical object in the form of
Mm-hmm.
printmaking. So a master printer essentially is as I was saying, like a technician who guides an artist in the process of making a print. And as
Mm-hmm.
a collaborative lead printer, that's normally been my role. That means that we an artist and I have a discussion. We come up with some ideas of where we can start. Plates get made, normally with the artist present, or I can talk about it later. Plates get made, and then I take over and I physically put ink onto those copper plates and physically run it through the press and print it onto paper for them so that they can see what it looks like. So the quicker I can make plates with the artists and produce a visual for them to sink their hands into and their thought processes into, the quicker the project kind of develops. So we are a team of people. It's not always me, just me. There's a team of 4 of us right now in my studio space, my home studio space now. I'm sitting in a corner. 2 other people printing behind
As
me.
they're walking. Yeah.
Yeah, we're, we're the ones who know how the equipment works. So when an artist
Mm-hmm.
comes in, we show them as many prints. I can show them a print in purple, red, green, yellow, and then they can say, I like that one. Let's go.
Right.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah.
what do we do? I say, you can add this or this or this to it. You can hand work on it. We can tear it up. You can put it back together.
Mm-hmm.
So an artist can solve a problem, a visual problem or a conceptual problem with a team of people. So artists normally are working in isolation on their own. And so we become their assistants in a community. I think we've been termed like the social artists. Printmakers are social artists, collaborative printmakers.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. And so Brooke and I actually got a chance to tour your studio space, and I can say that it was probably one of the coolest things that I've ever seen, actually. My mind was blown at the amount of different technical things to consider when making a print, because I made prints when I was in high school, and I think that was lithography, and you say you don't do that. But it was nothing like that, and it was just it was really interesting to see how well-rounded your studio is and the different aspects that you have to consider and variables to consider when making a print at that level. And I now have a new appreciation for printmakers in general, but incredible work, and it was really neat to be a part of that. We will talk about sort of where JRP is going in a moment here, but in order to do that, I think we should just maybe talk about the past a little bit more, just to set that foundation, because you spent nearly 2 decades at the David Kroot workshop in Johannesburg. And so I'm just curious, like, what was it like establishing a collaborative studio in that culture in Johannesburg in South Africa in such a dynamic and evolving sort of arts ecosystem?
So when I arrived in Joburg in 2003, it was a new democracy, essentially, wasn't quite 10 years old. And the positivity was everywhere. And so when I moved into the David Crute workshop with David, David was a book publisher, was also had a print workshop, and he had a gallery space. It was wide open to the public, so anybody coming in from the streets could tour the printmaking studio so they could see what we were making. And it's that philosophy that was outrageously frustrating at first, because you're trying to learn how to trust your hands, and you can't trust your hands when you're talking to someone, right?
Right.
You're learning how to do things technically. You're trying to work with an artist, and you have people coming and going all the time. And that was really hard. But what I also have to say is I was Canadian. I had done a little bit of printmaking, but I was also very, not naive, but new. And so I didn't ever say I knew everything. I kind of kept an open mind about things. And what I realized is that in hindsight, being that kind of open, that openness was actually what led me, I think, into being an easier collaborator to work with. I didn't know all the answers. And the previous generation of printers didn't want to share. So it wasn't a transparent.
Why do you think they wouldn't want to share?
These are printmaking. You can go to school to learn printmaking, but there aren't a lot of places thereafter to go and become an expert in your field, except for by apprenticeships. And if you're a master printer and you're leading a workshop, you're always running that workshop until you retire. So if you're training new people in order to take over your job, is how people kind of saw it. Or they would have to move in and open up their own studio, and then they become competition. So you see what happens is that, and in whatever city you're in, everyone wants to sometimes work with the same artists. So it becomes this highly competitive, can become something highly competitive. Whereas instead of, if you just approached it in the fact, like, I don't know everything, what can we do? How do we explore this? Let me just try. That was how I went into the job. A lot of tears after hours. I also have a very good poker face. So people couldn't tell if I was stressed or anxious about something. I would just say, I'll figure that out. And I would stay late into the night, and I would come in early in the morning, and I would do things that artists didn't know I was doing. Because if an artist knows those are the things that you're doing, they're going to feel bad for how long you're working on something. But it isn't about that. It's simply about, like, how do we best problem solve this? So that kind of approach and that kind of time in South Africa, there were only 4 or 5 people working at David Crute at that time. It was a small space. We eventually moved into a much larger space, and it's a beautiful workshop now. It's enormous. There were 5, 6 printers at kind of the height of everything, and currently there are 4 that are working there now. So I led that team and many other people over almost 16, 17 years. And I had the privilege from being from Saskatchewan. I would travel between Johannesburg and Saskatchewan often. And David Crute also has a gallery in New York City, and also works from London. So I would travel to some of those gallery spaces of David's and work there for a short time on my way home. And I would be trained by different printers. So I've traveled all over the States and in different parts of Europe and so on to learn from different people. And then that becomes how you accumulate all the information. Somebody will have told me something 15 years ago that only comes into being now, that I find, I finally understand why they told me that. So it's all those planned experiences.
Yeah. And that kind of cross collaboration through 2 different countries too. Like, what was something that you've kind of learned when you were in, like, South Africa compared to when you were maybe crossing over en route to Saskatchewan but stopping in New York? Like, what were some of the differences that you noticed in those, like, early years?
You must have had some sort of culture shock or something going from all those different places, or maybe there was a lot of similarities too. Who knows?
Well, what I realized, Saskatchewan's a wide open space. So we went to Taiwan, um, right from Saskatchewan, and that I found overwhelming because that was extremely big,
Mm,
a very
yeah.
busy place. So by the time I arrived in Africa, it's kind of a happy middle, to
Mm,
me. And I love the energy and vivaciousness of people. They're loud. There's a lot of conversation. People are laughing, smiling. There's like a resilience. There's a term that just says you make a plan. So everyone just makes a plan. I love South Africa. I loved working in
mm,
Johannesburg, and they are very different places. The art world that we belong in Joburg is very commercial. So
hmm
we make art to sell art. We make art
Right.
with artists to support the community print shop, dynamic, but not it being, but we also sell the work. So it's about broadening that message. And the reason I said that there's always like power in editions, power of repetition. Artists, when they're working,
hmm
once upon a time, a print could have been a reproduction of something. A print was a reproduction of something. In the
hmm
1960s, that all changed. With some of the collaborative workshops that came into being, it was like this very, like, let's push the envelope. Let's just
hmm
go really big. Let's make big prints. Let's do all these things.
Yeah.
Let's work in huge teams. And that philosophy has kind of moved itself down. So you learn
hmm
from how big somebody can think. And then you kind of
Mm,
move along from there. So those trips back and forth and me working between all those different print shops, not only could I learn a thing or two from each of those printers, I ask a lot of questions. I pretend I don't know everything because I don't know everything. So I'm not pretending, but I'm always asking. Like I'm asking, why would you
mm,
do this? Or how would you do that?
yeah.
How do you sell this? You know, like an idea can only be as good as it can be if you kind of consider it from all angles, right? And
For sure. Yeah.
the nicest thing about selling artist work is that, as I was saying, it's like not every artist's voice needs to be heard, but there are certain artists whose voice that when they are heard make changes. So
Mm,
it's so nice to be talking about those artists ongoing, and you learn more about the work that you made the more you talk about it. And the more you talk about the
absolutely.
people and why they're doing it. So it's, I don't know, all those different experiences allow you to talk about the people you work with. They allow you to
hmm
meet new people. It allows the community to grow. So all the collaborative studios, each of us know each other mostly.
I love that. I think you're saying some great things for people who are perhaps just starting out in their career, whether it's printmaking or not, I don't know, right? But it's that idea of remaining curious and asking questions and trying new things. And I think you being able to work in different countries and gain that experience is so powerful. And it's led you to work with so many different artists, both local and international. And one of them being William Kentridge, where you've been able to collaborate with him on more than 190 print works. And I just want to say, for people who aren't familiar with him, he is a South African artist who works spans charcoal drawings, print, sculpture, and tapestry. And I'm just curious, how would you describe that creative dynamic between you as a printer and William as an artist across such an expansive and sustained partnership? I think it's been almost 20 years, or maybe it's more than 20 years now that you guys have been working together. And I'm curious how that partnership kind of has evolved over the years and you've been able to keep that going, even with the distance between you.
I've had the privilege of working with William since 2006. One of my um, the very first work I worked on with William was a print that evolved into 10 different versions of itself. And William scratched into a copper plate with a dry point tool. So it's just essentially, it's a really deep, deep scratch that holds a lot of
hmm
ink, as well as he painted with carborundum, which is metal filings on top of the plate. So it was like an additive and a subtractive process on a copper plate. I had no idea
hmm
how to print it. And my initial tests were horrendous. And William has taught printmaking and has made, I think, probably over 1,300 prints now in his entire career. And he thinks through printmaking. So it's It's an idea that evolves into a drawing, that evolves into a sculpture, that evolves into a film, and so on. So it's this. So at first, when I first started working with him, we presented him this plate. He made an edition. I made terrible prints, and he came in and he said to me, "Use 2 pieces of paper because you need enough pressure through the press, but it needs to be cushioned, and 3 blankets." And then I could get everything that was subtractive into the plate, printing, as well as everything that was additive. So it needed to be this fine balance, and my print was perfect. And then I printed 15 of those, and then he scratched and added more marks. And then I printed 15 of those, and then he scratched and added more marks, and I printed 15 more of those. It was a year to finish that whole suite of 10 different versions of this bird in flight that eventually is resting. And it's those kind of projects that I've learned on. So that took a long time, and at the same time we worked on another edition. And then after that print, we started a series of prints that I worked on for 4 years. And then we would make singular prints during that time too, while I worked on this big series for him. And so then I learned how to work with 3 people. And then the next project I had to learn how to work with 20 people. And then how to juggle making 80 different works all at once. And then for the next print, we worked huge scale. And I had to learn how to juggle working on all these very big works simultaneously. And so I've just learned so many different things through the experience of actually doing, and then working with different people, and each of us contributing our best ideas. So when I also was working with these 100 different artists, it's because we would work on a lot of William's works simultaneous to the working with other artists. So it's all these juggles that you learn.
Right.
So eventually I wasn't printing as much as I once was. I was trying to manage the projects and the shows and the concepts and that kind of thing. So I've worked on William's work since 2006, and it's been an absolute privilege because the projects change and you grow in what you learn and how you do it, and you evolve that into how you work with the next artist you're working with. And so William allows us like the ceiling, and how we break through that ceiling even, and how we learn how paper works, et cetera, et cetera. And then we can work with all these different artists. We can give them suggestions for their work. So now I'm here in Saskatoon, but and William's in Johannesburg. William travels a lot, and so in the last few years, I've taken the print projects to him. We speak about them. Sometimes it comes via a phone call. I have a really good idea, he says to me. And then it'll take me time to figure out how to do it. So some of the works I can do from afar, but actually making the print. So we can make plates on behalf of William from afar, but we can't make the work without William in the studio. So then we meet William, we have discussions, we show the work, we finish the look and the feel, and then I come back to Saskatoon and I edition it. That means I make it again and again and again. So if it's an edition of 24, then I come back and I print the project, I make the project, I meet William again to finish the project.
So do you actually like bring the artwork or the prints or the plates to where he is? Like, do you get on a flight and actually physically bring that stuff to him to approve? Or how does that work? Are you ever nervous? Like the airline's gonna like lose it or something like that, or something nefarious might happen in travel? Like how do you protect that? I'm just curious.
We started by putting the prints into like a suitcase, because essentially it is just paper. So we're traveling with the paper, and we have those AirPods or what are they? AirTags, sorry, not AirPods, AirTags.
Okay.
So that we can track the luggage and that kind of thing. Now I move around with a little trolley. Sometimes I do have copper plates in my backpack.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm sure it feels, well, like I'm just thinking of this relationship that you have with William. I'm sure it's like any relationship in a person's life. Like the longer that you know someone, you're able to anticipate their needs and learn how to communicate with them. Whereas, newer relationships, and this one with Wally Dion, who's another artist that you collaborate closely with, and he's actually a Saskatchewan-born artist. But that is a newer relationship for you. And I'm curious what are the differences that you've noticed in working with a newer artist as opposed to one that you've established this stronger bond? Is it just the time, or is there like maybe a certain connection that you kind of feel with each artist? How does that differences work, I guess, between someone that you worked with longer than opposed to an earlier one?
Working with William, there's like it's in your hands. So you understand maybe one, I understand his aesthetic. So, and I look really closely at the other works that he's making. So when I was in Johannesburg, it was so nice. His studio was right next door, is still right next door to the David Crew workshop. So I saw William
Okay.
daily, actually. So I saw all of the
Yeah.
performances and that kind of thing as well. So I understood it. And so I still do have a sense of a look and feel. And the relationship, we are friends. You become friends. You understand each other. It's not just a working relationship all the time. Most of the artists that I've worked with are friends. And
Yeah.
it's because you end up trusting each other and you have like a really interesting conversation. So it becomes something that other people don't always necessarily understand. But I met Wally. I must have met Wally in university. He has worked with quite a
Okay.
number of my friends here in Saskatoon. I'm not sure what year he moved to Binghamton, just outside of New York, but Wally comes and goes regularly. And my husband, Brendan, is the other arm of this business. So I do all the printing, but I have forced him into the print shop. He just doesn't want to be a printmaker. But he is also a behind the scenes collaborative part of the art world also since we moved to Johannesburg. So he and I collectively have built up a very nice relationship with Wally. And it's through conversation, it's through visits here to the studio, it's through Instagram messages, it's through sharing like ideas, what's maybe possible. And it was, I think 2021 when we started working with Wally, or 2022. I'm not sure. But
Okay.
we have been working every summer, or for 4 summers, we were working at the University of Alberta's printmaking department with the technician there, Stephen Dixon, who's a specialist in photogravure. And photogravure is essentially like really easily put is being able to etch a photograph into a copper plate. And we have been playing with what's possible since 2020 with quite a number of Williams works, but also with young artists from South Africa. And then we asked Wally if he wanted to make one. I said to Bren when we came back to Saskatoon, I said, I'd love to work with Wally. He is a voice that I believe needs to be heard and is a very strong voice, very interesting person. And he said, okay, I'll try this. And I said, well, do you want to scratch into the copper plates? And he said, no. And then
that's funny.
And then I said, okay, well, we'll print it in black and white, but what if we print it in red? And he was like, why? And I said, well, your paintings are in red. And he said, okay. And Sophia, his wife, was with us, and she said, please do. And then I printed it in red, and then it turned into a series of 4 prints that we made called the Prairie Braids. And it was, it's that kind of thinking. It's like let's try. And if you don't like it, we tear it up. But if you do like it, here are a few extras. And Wally he works in tapestry in a sense of making fabric quilts. And he also works in circuit boards. He takes apart computers, cuts them up, and puts them back together as kind of quilts. So it's also sculptural. These are kind of sculptural pieces, 2D and 3D, as well as he paints. And he thought, I don't know how to bring all these different kinds of media together. And I said, well, printmaking can do that. He thought, and I really need an assistant because everything's so laborious. I said, well, we're printing your work when you're not. And so
It's really,
it's little things. And then now he said, but can we do something like this? And we said, yeah, we can. He's like, do you think I can? And I was like, yeah, we can. And this person can do this. And he's like, oh, really? And so it's like this, what's possible. So then Wally doesn't live here, but he comes here with an idea. We make the plates. Then we start printing, and then we can send pieces to him, and he can cut them up, and he can reconstitute them into fabric quilts. made from paper.
Oh, cool.
So it becomes this whole other extension of his work that he can work in, but he has assistants helping him.
Yeah, that's great. And it sounds like there's like maybe certain suggestions or innovations or risks that you might even take with that art from another artist. And it sounds like when you have an idea and you put that in front of them, they sort of implicitly have trusted you. Well, it sounds like in the case of Wally, he certainly did. Just, his eyes are kind of open, or his mind's expanding to the idea of what printmaking can do for his artwork as that extension. I'm just wondering if there's like anything that you do to like make artists feel safe within like suggesting something that might feel a little bit risky to them. Like, or have you ever had like a no, like I'm not doing that? Do you have any stories at all from that point of view either?
I have had a no. I have had people cry.
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 Oh my
What?
God.
It is if you picture yourself working on things that you understand, and then you move into a studio and at this point when this artist did cry, it was that there were 6 of us standing there waiting to help. And that kind of pressure. So I felt that last year, the Raimi Modern. There's a little bit of the pressure where everyone's waiting on me to tell them exactly which direction to go every day. And that is a lot. So you either love it or you don't. And what I'm finding is in Johannesburg, we had a short amount of time to make something, and then the artist would come and go, and we didn't have as much time to look at the work. Here I have more time. It's more reflective, and we're auditioning work all the time. So I was asking Hannah and Marcel, who are in here now, what was one of the nicest parts of having Wally in the studio last year? Because I've had artists in the studio with me always, and then I've been working in here on my own quite a bit, which I find really hard. And they said how nice it was to have the energy coming straight from the artist. And that is what is absolutely vital. So you make it a safe space by not hovering around them, by treating them as people. We sit around and we have coffee. We would have cheesecake every Friday. It's
Nice.
small things, and it wasn't about it's engaging different people in different conversations, that kind of thing. And it is about saying, if they don't like it, I'll just tear it up. So it's about something not being precious. And if you
Yeah.
want to
How
solve
does
a
that?
problem, try it with 6 of us instead of just you. But that takes time.
Yeah. And how does that make you feel if you put in all that effort over months, perhaps, of work, only to have an artist say, I want to tear this up? Is that devastating?
No. And I think one of the nicest things that another printer that I work with very closely, Phil Sanders, he's kind of someone who's been a mentor to me. I've apprenticed with him a lot. And he thinks the broader scopes of projects. And I've learned a lot from him, also from David and William, but collectively, and Phil said to me, like with prints too, if someone thinks they wrecked something, you always have one. So if you just print, like if somebody works on a plate, print it so they can see it and do it quickly. And then if they work on it and they think they wrecked it, at least there's still one. So there's this thinking, and I make, when people come into the studio, some of the first things I used to do was, if we have a bad print, I would make the interns tear them up, simply so that they started to not be as affected by it. So that you did understand that things weren't precious. I do a lot of prints that we end up tearing up.
Well, you probably have a much thicker skin than I do. If a client comes back and as a graphic designer, if they have a bunch of revisions to a logo that I did, that's not destructive. I can just go on my computer and change, the vector, and it's digital. I couldn't imagine going through months and months and months of work. And then the end result is having the work torn up. But I guess that's the iterative approach of printmaking, and you can just make those fine tweaks. And that's really, that's what makes it valuable in the end. It makes it a precious piece of printmaking art at the very end. It's the process.
It is. I think that's one of the most important things, is understanding, like, when you talk with artists, sometimes the final work is, less important even than the process. And sometimes the final work, you only see where it fits into the grander scheme of your body of work much later. So sometimes when an artist hasn't liked something, come back 5 years later and resolved it. And also if an artist really takes to a collaborative print studio, they will work there their entire careers. So if we're right now I'm working with the majority of these fabulous big projects of Williams, and we're working on a new work with Wally that will start on probably in September or next year. And I've got 6 other projects with different artists already. So if I find another artist that wants to come into the studio, instead of working with 5 people, now I'm working with 6. And so it's the balance of how you work with all these different people and where the work goes into the world and so on. So that's what becomes sustainable. So even if something may not work right now, it might work later. And those ideas can kind of come to fruition. So you have these amazing archives. So all of these collaborative print studios, there isn't another one in Saskatoon, but there are different print making types of studios all over Canada. There are quite a number of them in the United States, all over Europe, and South Africa has an amazing print community simply because of so many older generation artists who have worked in the studios and all the printmakers who are training younger printmakers. So the studios are thriving. They are so busy.
Yeah. Is that something you're hoping to create in Saskatoon long term? Do you see there being a printmaking subculture or community in Saskatoon more than just JRP? Is that the vision, or what would you like to see JRP sort of represent in Saskatoon as the sole printmaking studio right now? How do you expand that?
Caswell Bus Barns, really exciting project. And last night there was a tour, and it was so nice to see how many people came out to support and see the development. And it will be a creative hub. It's a mixed space. There's an architecture firm within. We are the printmaking studio that's in there. There will be a giant theater with props sections, as well as a gallery space, artist studios, etc., restaurant, and
Amazing.
it is a space that will need to be supported, but will be exciting to be supported. Our space will be open, as it kind of always has been. We have an open door policy. Come in and see how things are made. Come in and support and buy work by artists. By all means, come and ask me as many questions as possible. I'm an advocate for transparency. I think that if I can show everybody exactly how we do something, everyone will just do something different with it. So I don't believe in those secrets. I believe in complete transparency, because I also think that not everyone that goes into the arts needs to be an artist, but there is so much that you can do within the arts that contributes to that greater whole. So what I do think is quite nice is Saskatoon is affordable and a lovely place to be. And so you can make these kind of ventures. We can start a business here. When people said, well, of course you and Bren are opening a business, we thought, what? What do you mean? And they're like, well, it's obvious. You could be doing this for a long time. So our move from Johannesburg was simply so we could work between the two countries and have people that we know and in both places. And that eventually it kind of leads it into this bigger ethos of where things can be made, how you help to create the environment in which people learn and grow. We've been mentored by some of the best. So we believe in trying as hard as possible to do the same for others.
I think that's really powerful. And I think such a shift that Saskatoon needs is more of that collaborative printmaking. And I just wanted to touch on the exhibition that you guys had last year with live editions at the Ramey Modern. What most excited you about people coming into a public space and be able to see it with their own eyes? And I know that's what Caswell Bus Barns will do as well. Like, what kind of possibilities will this open up to people? Is it more just seeing what printmaking is? Because that can be such a foreign thing and people don't really know what that is in the community. Or what do you hope what are you hoping there will be like a change of perspective of how people view it?
That was like another privilege. I would never have thought of moving our print studio into a museum. So it was such a treat. That show was
Mm.
So interesting, so freeing, and like an absolutely wonderful opportunity. So I applaud the Ramey Modern, Michelle Jakes, Bevan Bradley, everybody's support to try to make something that is unusual happen. And for me, it was almost, as I was saying, our studio in Johannesburg was always open, so it's almost like I've been practicing my entire career. And that wasn't obvious to me that opportunity could ever be.
Mm.
But being in this kind of environment, the Ramey Modern is exceptional, which we can all see. So the idea of having people come in, they just thought, oh, this must be here permanently. He said, no, it isn't, but it
Right.
looked so
Right.
natural.
Yeah.
It
does.
Bren's design of the space, I just said, okay, well, we're going to work in a large format because let's show people really what is possible and how all of these big prints come to be. Because there's so many things then you can talk about. And this is things that people don't ever get to see. And you need props to explain printmaking properly. So even on a podcast now, it's like people can't see. I don't know how they might not
Right.
understand like how we do it. So that was what was really nice. And it's getting people's questions that opens our minds into where the missing links are. But it became a community space that people could come back to. So we had a lot of people who just kept coming back saying, okay, now what is happening? And why do you make more than one of them? And I said, well, for commercial purposes, but also, it's like this is what printmaking allows and is able. And they're like, well, where do they go? And I said, well, they go into museums, they go into art galleries, they go into people's homes. And I thought, oh, of course. But everyone has a different idea of what, an original piece of art is. And even though these are a repeated image, there's still an element of the artist's hand in there, right? So it's not and it's affordable. So you can own one of William's prints. You can own one of Wally's prints. And we keep finding them. Like Hannah, one of our print assistants, was walking through City Park last night, and she said there was she took a video and she saw one of Wally's prints and it was perfectly lit up in this person's living room. And it's beautiful. So you kind of, for the last 3 years of this journey from making the plates at the U of A for William and Wally, and then going to Johannesburg and making the work with William and David Crute Workshop, and then bringing it back to the Ramey and being able to show people how we edition it, moving it into our home studio and still editioning it here. We're training a whole new set of people who are looking at it, who are understanding now Wally's work, William's work, and then they start to think, well, what about this idea? And then that's I think what was just so nice about that show is that then it kind of put printmaking, but a collaborative shop, us back into the art world here in Saskatoon, but also in a broader picture. The work that we were editioning last summer has also been on show at Hauser and Wirth in New York City for the last 4 months. It's also shown in Goodman Gallery in Johannesburg. We showed it on the Brooklyn Fine Art Print Fair. It has traveled its way as well. So we've turned them into performance pieces for people to see. It's been quite a fun, challenging, often difficult, but fun.
Yeah. But it's just shifting that perspective for someone, because I think when people look at art and they see the price tag, they're like, why the heck is it that much? And I mean, you always hear people say, well, I could make that. But I think what you allowed was for that whole process to be seen. And that's quite special and not something that you get every day when you're walking around a gallery space wherever you are. So I think that is really neat and powerful, and especially for a community here in Saskatoon to see that collaborative process as well. But curious also, like, what are some now projects that your studio is working on, and what does like a typical studio day look like for you guys these days?
Right now we are working on the work that's behind me. So it's a photopolymer edition of Williams made of 12 parts. Each of those 12 parts has 3 layers on it. And it's a picture of a collage of Williams from his garden in Johannesburg. So it's another one of these big puzzles. We are also working on a 12-meter long book for exhibition in Dresden that opens on the 4th of September. So I'm just finishing the book, and it is an accordion style book. So to work on these large
cool.
works as well as these really long works has been an interesting challenge in this little space. But so I'm working on.
Let's double down on that for a second. I want to hear more about that book for a second. A 12-meter long book, accordion style. I can't even envision what that might look like. Can you describe what that is? Like, can you flip the pages? Is it of a cover?
You can flip the pages. What it is William did a project along the Tiber River in Rome in 2016. It's called Triumphs and Laments, and it is based essentially on, with every triumph, it's someone's tragedy, right? With somebody's triumph, it's somebody's tragedy, and it was these 10 to 12 meter high drawings along the Tiber River about Rome's greatest tragedies and their greatest triumphs, and it was through history, through contemporary images of refugees moving and all of this kind of thing. But the way that the drawings were put up there, it was a big giant stencil, and the wall was sandblasted clean behind it. So the drawing essentially was on the wall, just in the natural patina from pollution and bacterial growth and that kind of thing. The project they thought would fade after 7 years. It was intended to be ephemeral, but it faded after about 3.5 years, which means that this beautiful, enormous project is gone. And all that exists of it are photographs. And because we've been working in photogravure, and then we found a new technique. It's not a new technique, but it's called photopolymer. And you use a digital printer to print onto plastic plates that allow you to print from them. We are able to make the plates in our home studio with assistance from Creative Saskatchewan. So again, it's like another part of this Saskatchewan arts supports that we've been able to utilize. And what we've done is we've made all of these plates. I think there's 35 plates, and we print 1 to 2 of them on long sheets of paper. Then I cut those up and I fold them in different folds into 4 long sections that are essentially 3 meters long each, that get folded up and placed into a box. So they'll come in a box that's a 4A3 in size, but in fact, once you put them out on a table, it's an accordion style that can go up to 12 meters long. Does that make sense?
That sounds like an incredible amount of work. Yeah. We need to see the pictures at some point.
Pictures. So, and what it is it never made sense for William to, this is a giant project of which he's discussing the whys, and, it sits within the context of his work in a much broader capacity, but to simply put it into a museum show or a gallery show. We have made giant woodcuts about this project. He has made giant etchings, but people can't understand the scope of the whole wall. And what these polymer plates have enabled is that it takes a photograph and puts it into William's realm via prints. Because as I was saying, he's made over 1,300 prints. And now I've made approximately 200 prints with William, but a lot of these are made from pieces. The last work that I say, one work, is actually 50 pieces of paper. So it's like, think about that in a broader scheme, right? So there's a lot of printmaking in his work already. And if we're making the plates from the photographs, there's little people in the photographs. So you have real people next to these enormous drawings, and you can't quite figure out what's happening. But what it does do is that it brings all of the rest of the drawings into context for an audience, because now they can see the whole wall and they can understand it a little bit better. And what's nice about being an accordion style book is you wander around it. So just like you used to be able to wander in front of the wall when all the images were up there, you're you're looking at something you can't quite understand, but you get that wonder. So you get the time instead of it just being a photograph that's in front of you. So print has this power. We originally, he said that he phoned me and said, I have a quick project. And we've been working on this for 2 years. But what he meant and what I loved is I always think about quicker, faster, more productive by Radiohead. And that's because lots of these projects take so long. But what William meant was these photopolymers we're able to print these quite quickly. So then I can concentrate on the folds of the book and gluing the book instead of how long it takes me to print it.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I'm excited to see it because I also had to reach out to the Remy Modern and say, can I work on your stage? And they said, why?
Yeah.
And I said, I need to see this whole book in front of me. And then can I work in the other room? And can I just have 7 long tables? And they were like, yes, but why?
Like,
yes, but why? That's so interesting. Well, I think we have time for maybe one more question, and I'll let Brooke ask this question because she asked it so well. But so I'll flip it over to Brooke, and then we can kind of wrap here. But I just want to say this has been a really great discussion, and it's just so interesting to talk to people that still are celebrating the craft of print in a world that's so digital. And it's, I think, so valuable for people to hear your point of view. Thank you for not letting this craft die, or thank you for letting it, you're giving it the stage and the attention that it deserves, I think, to help inspire the next generation. And I think that in design, specifically graphic design, which is very digital, we've lost this idea of the tangibility and working with your hands and sometimes having to use a razor blade to cut things out in little shapes and gluing and all that stuff, pasting. So I'm re-inspired, and I just want to thank you for that, because sometimes we can forget, about the craftsmanship side in the physical realm. We immediately just go to the digital realm, and there's something that's lost there in that translation. But I really do believe that if you can think about the physical realm, that's going to make the digital work that much better too. And so that's just my own perspective that I've had. So just want to thank you for re-energizing me a little bit, talking about print.
It's a pleasure. I'm not good on the computer. There's a give and take. I have to say everything because I'm doing everything with my hands, or my husband and I, if we argue about anything, it's about the technology. How do I adjust the headphones to the computer? How do I back things up? And, it's those kinds of things. I forever in Johannesburg shied away from digital. I remember always talking about how important it is to draw with our hands. And then since coming to Canada, we have been working with digital images on copper plates, merging the two. So I almost feel like I've learned a lot from being able to manipulate things in a different way, not from actually working on the computer. I'm not working on the computer. I'm asking other people to do that, merging the two things. But it is the hard part are some of the terms or the words that we've placed on art making. So what people term what craft is, and then maybe there isn't as much importance placed on it. What technicians are, it's like what is an artist? So when I say I'm not an artist, but I make more art than artists do sometimes, so yeah. And I'm lucky enough that I have a team of people to help me. My husband, who is essential, to every aspect, a conversation. If I'm working on something, he's one of the only people I can talk to, because he understands what I'm working on, and he can also see what maybe I don't see. So it's like these strengths in the teams, and it's fun to talk about them. So we kind of dream big, and then we try to make it come to reality, and then we try to include as many people as possible in doing that. And that's, I think, especially after COVID, has been what has been so hard, is getting communities back together. That's why I'm so excited about Caswell, or, the exhibitions at the Remy Modern that bring people in. But people have to keep going. They can't, there are a lot of things that are happening, but we have to support them. We have to get people buying art to actually support them. Funding it can't sustain everybody for long periods of time. So we have to be there for each other. So it's a pleasure to talk about, and have these conversations.
Yes. No. Yeah. No, thank you, Jill. I think we could totally probably talk for another few hours, and maybe we will one day, but I just want to echo what Taylor has said. I think what you're doing is great, and I'm super excited to see how the Caswell Bus Barns project pans out and come visit your studio there. But yeah, with a question that we're asking every guest that comes on the Memo podcast is, if you could write a memo to a younger version of yourself, Jill, what would you say?
Oh, uh, I don't know. I think it's just believe that you can get there, really, because it's like I don't know, it can be a very frustrating journey, but you learn a lot. So I've tried to figure out where what I say to young people now, and I just say try, really. Because the thing, and what it's turning into is everyone's like, I'm trying, and then somebody will say to one of us, and I said it to someone last night, I said, you're doing. So that's actually the difference. And a lot of what happens, and this is real, is you get up and you just have to start somewhere. So if you're in the arts, you will hum and haw forever. Just start somewhere. And I take it from William, who just starts with the coffee pot. So if he goes into the studio, he draws what he knows. And he makes another drawing, and then eventually it leads into that idea. I come in here and I glue things to get started, and
Yeah.
that's all it is it's like a trying, and then find like-minded people to talk to.
Thank you so much.
Finding like-minded people to talk to. I love that. I think it's about finding your community. And I just also love what you said about talking about the people side of the artwork too. Because it's not just about producing the art. It's about creating a community of people and like-minded individuals that you can sort of like celebrate that art with, or co-create with, or collaborate with. So thank you again. Really appreciate the conversation here today. And we're so excited to have you at Memo Creative Festival, October 2nd and 3rd. Jillian's going to be doing a workshop with us. So if you want to learn more from Jillian, please come on out to Memo Festival, and you can ask Jillian a whole bunch of questions there. And I'm sure she would love to have a conversation with you and have you at her workshop. So thank you again, Jillian. I'm sure we'll chat again soon, and hope to, create something awesome with you in the future.
Thank you both very much. This is really nice.
Thank you. This was awesome. Thank you.